talk about manifesting your dreams through dedication and inspired action. In this podcast episode, I have the honor of chatting with Elizabeth Gascoigne, who is the founder of an incredible company called Absence of Proof, which is an event curation company and a non-alcoholic cocktail bar pop-up here in New York City. And oh my God, watching Elizabeth's journey over the past few months has been the coolest fucking thing. Y'all will hear all about it in today's podcast episode. But Elizabeth literally took this dream, this idea that she had based off of what her wants and what her needs were in her journey of becoming the highest and greatest version of herself, and she turned it into such a cool concept and thriving company that has now been featured in New York Times, Fortune Magazine, Thrillist, and so many other publications literally within the past 6 months. She started her company 6 months ago, and she has already manifested such a massive impact and so much success through it. So if you are looking to be inspired, if you are looking to learn more about having a sober curiosity or non-drinking, this episode's so for you. But a little bit of a background. So when I was first moving back to New York City after I was living in London, I wanted to build a community of people who were in the same position of me where they either were cutting back on drinking or didn't drink whatsoever. And so I got on TikTok one day and searched Sober NYC, and Elizabeth, in Absence of Proof, was the first video to pop up, and I was immediately hooked. I was listening to all of her videos, watching all of her content, reached out to her to have her come on to the podcast, and we literally were going to do this way back when, but I'm so glad that divine timing and everything that played out in both of our lives led us to recording it now, because the amount of growth and momentum and manifestation that has happened in her life since I first was introduced to her back in October is insane. But I just want to speak to the impact that Elizabeth has not only made in my life, but the lives of so many people here in New York City, and I'm sure the world as she continues to grow through creating Absence of Proof and through creating this community. Literally, it is the most welcoming, supportive, warm, homey community I could have ever asked for. And I'm just so excited for all of you to listen to this podcast episode. And if you want to connect with Elizabeth, you can check out the show notes down below. If you're in New York City, definitely go to one of her events. They are incredible, and I may even see you there at it. And I hope you enjoy this episode. What's up, and welcome to the No Bullshit Manifestation Show, the podcast that demystifies all of the nonsense that surrounds manifestation and gives you a realistic view of what it's like to be on a personal, professional, and spiritual growth journey. I'm your host, Kat Kozad, manifestation and money mindset expert, and I'm so happy you're here. Let's fucking do this thing. I'm so excited for you to be here on the show. So thanks for being here, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. I've been such a huge fan of yours for a while.
Ditto. Oh my gosh. I know the two of us hype each other up like there's no tomorrow. So let's kick this off with you sharing your story with us of like what led you to who you are and where you are today doing what you do in the world.
Yeah. So I would say there's a few factors that kind of like ultimately led up to Absence, which started when I was relatively young. So a little bit of backstory. I was quite the rebellious teen. I'm not sure what your party life was in your teenage years, but I was definitely like a goer outer. I was very rebellious teen. I was a raver, all of the things. And I think that had, while I wouldn't wish that on any other teens, I do think that it was a very important part of me becoming who I am now. So I was about 18 or 19 years old, and I was looking at my life, and I was looking at where my friends' lives were. They were going to really good colleges. It was this big, exciting transition point. And I had just not set myself up for that. I had prioritized drinking and going out and boys and all of these things. And I couldn't get into a good college. I didn't even take the ACT or SAT because I just knew that I wouldn't get in the place that I wanted to go, and I didn't want to deal with that failure. So that was a really big turning point for me of like, this is not who you are at your core. Like I've always known, and I don't want this to sound arrogant, but I always known I'm meant for something really fucking cool. Like I've just known that forever. And I think that everyone is, but you have to remove the noise. And one of the things that was the noise for me was the partying and the drinking and all of these things. And I didn't think that it was the partying's fault that I wasn't the place that I wanted to be, but it definitely wasn't helping me get to where I wanted to be. So I decided to completely remove alcohol and everything else for a year. And in that year, everything changed for me. Like I discovered what my passions were, what I wanted to do with my life. And so after that year, I was like, well, let's do another, and then let's do another. So I was sober for 3 years, starting at 19, which was super interesting, being sober in this like key college time. I was kind of like weird for doing that. And I didn't have any peers that were also doing that. So that was like the start of my relationship with sobriety, or being sober curious, or however you want to talk about it. But after those 3 years, I had gotten myself to a point in my life where I was really happy. Like everything looked exactly the way I wanted it to look. And so I was like, okay, this is now a position where I can reincorporate alcohol in moderation, because I still wanted to enjoy like nightlife and things like that. And so for probably 2 years, I did drink in moderation. I went out, it was fine. And it wasn't detrimental to my life, but it also wasn't additive. It wasn't making my life better. So last year, I guess a full year ago now, I was like, okay, I want to be the absolute best person that I can be. And anything that does not support me in that is gone. Like it doesn't have a place in my life. And alcohol was one of those things. So when I removed alcohol, I all of a sudden had no nightlife options because we live in New York, which is like everything, even from like going to the park on like a Saturday in the summer. It's like, who's bringing wine? Like it's like a whole cultural thing. And I had read some things about like a shift to sober curiosity, and like I knew that it was kind of happening on a broader scale, not just with me. So I just decided to start throwing non-alcoholic pop-ups and parties, and seeing what the market was like. And luckily it stuck, and now here we are.
It's fucking incredible. It's amazing listening to your story. How many similarities we have in our stories together is like a lot of the partying when I was young, and it really sticking with me up until I decided to quit drinking in March of 2020. So I'm coming up on a year in just a little bit.
Congratulations.
But thank you. Yeah, it's so interesting making that shift from drinking, partying, doing all of the things, to really deciding for yourself, like, okay, I'm choosing to be the best version of myself, and anything that does not support me being the highest, greatest version of myself has to go. So for you in that experience, like, how did it feel to like make that decision that anything that didn't support your highest good had to go?
I mean, I think it felt very empowering. Like, I think that there's a lot of situations in which I have felt like a victim, which is so crazy because I'm so not a victim, but where I feel like life is happening to me. And I am just the product, and like, oh, well, I don't have what they have because of XYZ, or because I have XYZ mental illness, I will never be this successful, or things like that. And it took me sitting with that and being like, this is a bunch of bullshit I'm telling myself. Like, I have all of the raw material to be anything that I want to be, but I'm not helping myself. I'm literally, it's like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept of upper limits of like so I love that, of like, we all have this capacity for feeling good. And when I realized that my upper limit, my capacity for feeling good was so low, like as soon as I started to reach that, I was like, how can I fuck this up? Like, how can I bring myself back down to a place of comfort? And the way that I did that was alcohol, going out, forming relationships with people that I knew were not good for me, all of these things that kind of keep me in this stuck place. And when I realized that that upper limit is actually a choice, all of those things went away, because I was like, why would I self-sabotage myself? Why would I tear myself down? I'm supposed to love myself the most. So like, let's just cut this shit out.
Yeah, absolutely. So powerful. And so since you really like created that awareness for yourself and were able to recognize your own upper limits, have there been moments of like the subconscious sneaking back in and like wanting you to sabotage, or has it been like, okay, because I have the awareness of it, I can avoid it this time?
Yeah, it's a great question. And absolutely, I would say like every single day, there's something where I'm like, I feel like lately I've been super grateful to been getting a lot of publicity for what I'm doing, which is really exciting. But with that also comes this sense of imposter syndrome of like, why me? Like, why am I getting this? I don't feel like I deserve this. all of these things. And so while I'm not self-sabotaging with things like drinking, like that's a hard boundary for me that I don't want to have in my life. I think I do self-sabotage with things like procrastination, like scrolling TikTok for hours, all of these other things that are real addictions, honestly. And I'm having to reframe those things in the same way that I was thinking about drinking, of like, TikTok may seem harmless, but when I'm spending 4 or 5 hours on TikTok because I don't want to do the work that I know is going to up level me, like that's me bringing my upper limit down and making myself comfortable again.
Yep, absolutely. Oh, I love that. And thank you so much for sharing that with us, because for everybody who's listening right now, it's like just listening to this right here. One is like, know that you're not alone in whatever you're experiencing in terms of like your upper limits, your self-sabotaging behaviors. And when it comes down to it, like self-sabotage is misguided self-love. Like our brains are so convinced that us reaching these big, beautiful dreams that we have for ourselves is like big, daunting, and scary. So that's why we tend to self-sabotage. And when you can bring this awareness to the table of like, okay, I cut this major one out of my life, alcohol, whatever it may be for anybody who's listening. And now it's in these like quote unquote less harmful ways, but they're still holding you back from fully tapping into the potential that's there. It's like you have the same choice with it. And I'm in the same boat for everybody who's listening as well. It's like every single day, it's like, okay, what is the thing that I'm going to catch myself in that I know is happening to try and hold me back from reaching my full potential and like reaching all of these dreams that I have for myself. But it really is just like that active choice in our day to day to be like, okay, no, like fuck this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done with this. I'm choosing for myself. And in the moments that we choose that thing, giving ourselves the grace to know that like, okay, I still have the option to shift my energy right now and choose something else.
Absolutely.
So with all of this, in like the actual process of like quitting drinking, what was the most challenging thing that you feel as though you experienced in that part of the journey?
Yeah, I would say the first time I went actually sober, and I had identified as being sober and all of these things, I would say the hardest part was like the peer pressure, because when you 18, 19, 20, like that is peak peer pressure years. And even in high school and all of that, but I was participating in the social norm in high school. So when I stopped, I felt like, who do I hang out with now? I actually had people who I found out were kind of like talking behind my back about like, we don't want to hang out with her anymore because that's like really fucking weird. And like, so there was that like mean girl, young kind of toxicity. I'm super grateful to have no one in my life like that anymore. And like every single person, even before I started abstinence, when I was like, I don't drink, they're like, word, okay. Like there's never been any of that now, which I'm amazingly grateful for. But I think now it's been, what do I replace that time with? Like drinking is time consuming, not just from the time you're actually like imbibing, but like the next morning you're sleeping, you're like, oh, I'm so hungover. It's kind of like a cop out for doing anything productive. You're like, I went out last night, so Saturday, like this is a rest day. And so now I have all this energy and all this time. And so it was like, what do I do with this time? Like I want to feel like productive and all of that. And so maybe not the irony, but I think the beauty of it is quitting drinking gave me the energy to start my own company about not drinking. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of full circle.
I love that so much and couldn't agree more on the timing aspect. Like, I feel as though I've given myself so much of my life back by not drinking, not only in like the aspect of like, I feel so much healthier inside of my body. Like I have the energy, I have the mental clarity, all of like the physical benefits from it. But like, yeah, like Saturday morning, oh my God, Saturday morning, especially here in New York, it's magical. It's so special. Like it's quiet and it's just like a completely different experience than anything that I had before this journey of like choosing to quit drinking. So I just so fully relate in the fact that it's like, wow, like there's such massive shifts that happen that like maybe people wouldn't expect can happen by choosing to even just like question it here and there, have a night where they don't do it and see the difference in what can happen for them.
Absolutely. And I think that's one thing that I've been very intentional and very firm on with abstinence is like, we are not preaching one lifestyle is better than another. Like,
Yeah.
your relationship with alcohol is yours to decide. But previously there really haven't been options. So it's like, maybe you don't want to drink on a Saturday night, but you do want to see your friends. Like, what was the option previously? So yeah, I think like you said, some people just want a night off, which is also totally valid and awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about absence. Like, tell us the
Yeah.
journey of absence from like its very beginning to where you are at with it now.
Yeah. So, and you'll appreciate some of this because you are also a business owner, but it is literally just like a shit show, like every day, but like in the best way, where it's like you wake up and you're like, all right, I'm going to just try my absolute best. And I think that that is, if starting a business has just shown me that like that's really all you can do. Like, you're not going to know everything. You're not going to be born Jeff Bezos. Like, you're going to need to do some research and learning. And like, I don't have a background in events. I don't have a background in beverage development. Like, all of these things, I literally was starting as like a 5-year-old level in doing. And so, but I told myself that like, because I've, like we talked about before, I've always wanted to start a business, but I've always been so afraid to do that. And I have self-sabotaged the second that I do it. I've like played around with a lot of business ideas in my life and I've just never proceeded. So I was like, I'm just going to show myself that I can at least see something through. And so my first idea was non-alcoholic bars. Like, I wanted a place to go. And this came from a lack of like opportunity for this in my own life. Like, when I stopped drinking, I wanted to go to these places and they didn't exist. So I started thinking about non-alcoholic bars. And I was like, okay, what is a proof of concept that could prove out that this would actually work as a viable business? And so I did a lot of research on pop-ups and things like that. And so the first thing I was going to do was rent a pop-up space in Soho for a week, which, like, I love the baller mentality, but like, I do not have the financial means for that. I don't know like what I was thinking. And so I literally almost put a deposit down on this place. Like, it was crazy, but I was like, this is gonna happen. This is gonna be great. And then my wonderful partner, who is a total finance bro, was like, hey, let's look at the numbers of this. Like, let's make sure you're actually doing this responsibly. And so we ended up not doing that. And we were thinking about cheaper ways to do that. And so I started to think about businesses that are closed at night. Like, what is an opportunity where I can bring new customers to a small business in New York, and they're not losing any money because they don't have to close down for me. And the first thing I thought of was coffee shops. So I started reaching out to a lot of coffee shops in New York, and New York is very expensive on all fronts. And so a lot of the feedback that I got was like, all right, cool, it's 10,000 for the day. And I was like, I don't have $10,000 to rent this place for a day. Like, I'm not funded. I don't know anything about this. Like, I need a place that's just going to be like, try, and then we'll take a cut.
Yep.
And I found Cobra Coffee. A friend of a friend knew the owner, and I cannot speak highly enough about the establishment of Cobra Coffee, the way they do things there, the management, everything. From the first conversation I had with them was like, the whole thing was, I want you to succeed. How do we help you succeed? Like, it's just genuine good people. And yeah, so I basically pitched this idea and they were like, okay, we don't, like, they were all like a little bit like, we don't do mocktails. Like, we're a little confused on this. But I was like, let's just try. And then the first one sold out. I don't know if you were at the first event.
I was not the first one. I was still in London. I think I came to the next one.
You're so cool. Such a world traveler. I love it. But yeah, so the first one, and then the Cobra Coffee team was like, oh shit, like, there's something here. And so then we just kept working together of like, how do we make this financially viable for both of us? What do you need to see? How do I help you? All of that. And we just formed this amazing partnership. And we threw probably, I want to say 6 or 7 events at Cobra last year. And that was really like the birthplace of absence. So I'm forever grateful. And I'm excited to be going back there on Monday for an event with Bumble. But yeah, that was like the journey of starting absence. And then from there, once you, as you know, you're active on social media too. Social media is like the most powerful tool for making new connections with people that are in a similar field or have similar mindsets. So once I started posting on social media about what I was doing, brands started reaching out, other collaborators started reaching out, and it was like this snowball effect, to finally get to where we are now, which is a every weekend residency at a beautiful speakeasy in the West Village called Maisie Below. And we're partnering up with Sachet, which is a non-alcoholic bottle shop for that. So it's just been like this very organic growth process. But yeah, when I say it's a shit show, I mean, just like, you wake up and it's like, all right, like, I'm going to check my email and see what's there, and then we're going to do it. And just having that mentality of being okay with being a beginner and being okay with not knowing what's going on until you figure it out, I think has been very crucial for growing absence.
Absolutely. Oh, it's so cool to like hear your journey within all of that, and just like totally reaffirming the fact that like business is a fucking shit show. And like,
Yeah. And that's okay. Like that's the fun part.
Totally. And that's like, I want to say that for everybody who's listening as well, because I know so many of the women here are entrepreneurs or thinking of becoming entrepreneurs. And it's like, the idea that you have to have your shit figured out is a myth. Like there is absolutely zero truth inside of that. And like listening to Elizabeth and I, like, let us both be examples of the fact that like you can create a really fucking cool company with like zero clue of how you're actually going to do it. And that's honestly like, that's the manifestation process in and of itself, is like that feeling you were talking about at the beginning of the episode of like, you knew you were made to do something really fucking cool. Like I felt the same exact way as a little girl. Like it never made sense to me. And I always felt to some extent that I didn't fit in, because I was like, I'm made for something more. Like I'm made for something bigger than what I'm experiencing right now. And it never made sense until I started to get really clear on the fact that like, okay, I have a vision and I don't know where that vision's going to go or how I'm going to get there, but fully believing in the fact that like that feeling inside of me is there for a reason. And anybody who's listening to this, like that feeling inside of you is there for a reason. And as you start to have the vision of it, it's like really just waking up, like you said, and taking this messy action towards different things and throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. And when something sticks, continuing to move forward with that as long as it feels like supportive and in alignment to you.
Yeah, I like what you said about action. I actually have this new thing that I'm doing with myself where I don't talk about something that I'm doing or planning to do until I've done it. Because like so often we get in this trap of talking about what we want to do. And like, and I've even done this like close friends where it's very unintentional, but like, I'm going to build this or I'm going to do this. And they're like, that's awesome. And then you're getting the reward for doing it without actually ever doing it. And so the most important thing is just action. It can be messy action. It can be slow action. It can be, you know, anything, but just do one thing that gets you a little bit closer and do it scared. Like you're never going to not have those feelings of like, should I be doing this? Especially at the beginning when you have no idea what you're doing, but allow those feelings to be present and like do it anyway. Like that's the key to all of this. Is like, you just got to do shit.
Yep. Absolutely. Oh God. It's just like, it's so refreshing to hear like somebody else who's fucking doing something incredible say that, because I think that one of the things that we experience so often, especially as women, and like you were saying earlier, is like some level of imposter syndrome in what we are doing on a day-to-day basis. Do you think that like sober curiosity or people choosing to like quit drinking altogether is like a movement and like the way forward?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, 1000%. I think one of the things that I've been conscious of is like what language I use around this, because as I've learned more and more, I know that people have different relationships with like sobriety, meaning they're recovering an active addiction, versus sober curiosity, where it's like more of, oh, I don't want to drink as much. Let me see if I can cut back, that kind of thing. But all in all, I think the reevaluation of relationships with alcohol is going to continue. People are realizing that they actually don't need alcohol to have a good time. And like kind of what we talked about is like, I think Gen Z and like younger millennials really have this like therapy mindset, this like, I want to be the best me mindset. I want to feel good mindset. And alcohol just so clearly does not fit into that picture. So I definitely think people will be drinking less and less.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel as though since you decided to quit drinking, like has your relationship with New York changed at all?
So it's interesting, yes, but I don't necessarily think, well, yes, in terms of like clubbing, like I used to like hit the town. Like we were out there, like it was awesome. I don't do that anymore, mostly because I'm like an early riser and an early to bed now. Like I do feel like those shifts have happened. But to be completely honest, like I just don't have the time. Like I'm working a full-time job right now and building absence. So it's, you know, my 9 to 5 is my 9 to 5. And then as soon as 5 p.m. hits, like it's absence until I sleep at 11. And every single weekend is absence. And so I know it won't always be like this, but I've kind of accepted that like this is the phase of my life to grind. Like this is and finding joy in that grind. And to be honest with you, like New York is a city of hustlers. Like we come here to do really cool shit. And so I came to New York to do cool stuff. So let's actually do the cool stuff that I came here to do. So I've kind of like, yes, I have FOMO when I see my friends at really fun concerts or parties. Like, yes, I would love to get to go out more, but right now, like, I'm just so in like all consumed in this project and my dreams for this vision and project that I'm okay with missing out on those things, because I know that there will be future times in which maybe absence will be full time or all of that. So yes, but I'm actually not that mad about it.
Totally. Love that. And for everybody listening as well, one of the things that I talk about on the podcast often is like pursuing your manifestations unconditionally. Like that is what I mean when I talk about like pursuing your manifestations unconditionally is like, yeah, you see your friends doing those things, or there's like the desire to maybe not have to put the energy and effort into the business in the way that you are right now, but it's like your choice to do it anyways, because this is the vision that you have for yourself and like what you know without a shadow of a doubt you're going to create. Like that is so crucial for the manifestation process and like is going to just like pay off in ways that the two of us have no clue of right now. And I'm so excited to see the way that it's all gonna like come together in everything that you've done. Because even for everybody who's listening as well, like some context, when I was still in London back at the beginning of October, I was on TikTok and I was like, okay, going back to New York, like I really want to find like a community of people who aren't drinking or who are cutting back on alcohol or whatever it is, so that I can have something like that. Because when I first decided to quit drinking back in March of 2022, I felt as though like my social life and like everything here in New York was dead. And I went through like a 3-4 month sort of depression of like, who am I now? Like, what do I do? I don't have friends, like I can't hang out with people, I can't go out, all of the things. And I was searching on TikTok for Sober NYC, and you were the first video that popped up. And immediately I was just like, I want to get this girl on the podcast. And months later, here we are actually doing it. But like the actual like friendships that I've made with the people who go to your events, as well as like the friendship that we've built, is so powerful to me. That like these are the kinds of things that can happen when you choose to like follow what feels good to you, even though it may not make sense to the general public or like the world looking in at you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes me so happy that you have felt that sense of community, because I think, you know, the elevator pitch of absence is we're a non-alcoholic bar pop-up, you know, event creation, all of that. But under that, the more important bullet point is that we are a community of people that care about our health, make intentional choices with our lives, like, you know, all of these things of like, we are inclusive, we are supportive, like, this is where you go to make your friends. Like, that's what I want absence to be. And it feels so rewarding that that has been a reality for so many people that have come to events. And like, yeah, I went to like a girls' night the other night with people that I had met at absence. And I was just like, who knew that these people existed in New York? Like, you know, and so I think that it's really, really cool to see that happening.
Oh, God, I love it. Cool. So last question I have for you. This is one I always ask on the podcast, is for anybody who's listened to this episode and has resonated with it, what's one piece of no bullshit advice that you can give to them?
You're never going to feel ready to do anything ever. It's never going to feel like the right time. And I know that that's like such a cliche Tony Robbins quote or something, but seriously, like if I waited until I felt ready or knew what absence was going to look like to start, absence would not exist. And so it's like, you have like, you as a human being are so powerful. Like, just the shit that one person can accomplish is insane. But you have to do it, and no one is going to do it for you. And so it's like, if you're listening to this and you have this idea and you know what you want to chase, but you just have been telling yourself that you can't chase it, like, just do one small thing today to do it. Like, that's it. And then tomorrow wake up and be like, what's one small thing I can do? And then those things compound and you'll be amazed. I mean, I started absence 6 months ago, and like, here we are. Like, crazy shit can happen if you just do it.
Yeah, literally you started it 6 months ago and you're already in the New York Times.
That is manifestation, because New York Times has been on my vision board for probably like 5-6 years now. So
fucking cool.
yeah, the no bullshit is like, you can and you will, you just have to.
Yep.
Like,
absolutely. Oh, so good. Amazing. Well, I know that people are going to want to be able to connect with you and find you from listening to this episode. So where can they find you and what do you have going on right now?
yeah, so we're doing a dry January residency every Friday right now. I'm not sure when this airs, but hoping to, well, not hoping. We do have some stuff planned in February. We just haven't announced it yet. So stay tuned for that. Best way to stay up to date is honestly Instagram, just the classic. I am on TikTok, and also we have an email list. So events first get posted on Handstamp, which is like the app that we use for ticketing. The second place they go is email list, and third place is Instagram. So if you want the best chance at getting tickets, definitely subscribe to the email list.
Cool. I'll put the links to all of that down below in the show notes. And y'all, if you want to go to these events, act fast because Elizabeth sells out every time.
I am so grateful. I could not do it without people like you, Kat. You've been so supportive since day one. I am literally eternally grateful. And I'm so grateful for not just the professional relationship we have, but friendship that we have. So I can't wait to see all of the amazing things that you do. And thank you for creating a platform for me to chat.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.